Okay, welcome Erik. Welcome at the Private Kitchen. You're very known as a sound designer, supervising sound editor, and a re-recording mixer. So we want to pay attention to both roles from the perspective and the importance for media composers, particularly film composers. What is your experience as being when you're supervising sound editor, so running the whole sound department? What is your experience with composers? Do they tend to collaborate? Do they approach you as a composer, or do you have to approach themselves? What's your experience so far?
Well, I have different experiences. Some composers really try to collaborate and to make contact and to be involved. Most of the times, you have in the beginning you have a meeting, you have a kickoff, and then have a negotiation about what should be where and where the cues should be. Together with the director mostly, and then everybody goes his separate ways, and then you don't hear anything for like weeks or months, and then things become to drip in. You get some cues, but in my experience, there's always a way to get it together. The only thing sometimes happens that you don't use cues because the whole soundtrack is already very rich, and you just don't need music, and then the next cue gets more important if you lose one. So that happens, and mostly the composer comes in at the final mix. Mostly not at the very end, but a little bit earlier. So I like to do the pre-mix before, and then when we get to the big mixing stage, I like to have the composer like in the beginning, one of the first days, so you can just sit together and mix everything. So the composer is also very happy with with everything. Then you can sit with the director again and make final decisions. That could also be decision the composer doesn't like. and then mostly at the very end there's a screening when everything is done, and then you can make one or two tweaks, but that's about it. But then, that's mostly how it goes. But also, what I do really like is when the composers are really involved before the picture lock. So in the editing, they already work with music of the composer. Mm-hmm. That makes the whole process a lot smoother, I think, because they don't get used to temporary offline score. And the sound of the score is already very close to what it's gonna be. So that's my favorite setup, I would say, because then you're already working with his material or her material, and then then everything is already much more what it should be. So that happens also. I think more and more.
You see a tendency that this happens more and more?
I think, I see more projects where the composer is already making things for the editing process,
That's a good development, because I have sometimes the impression it's also a matter of time, of course. People are very busy. Most of the times that's a limited amount of time, so everybody's very busy using all the time they have to make the best they can. They forget to communicate with each other or to throw things at each other, which of course takes time if you have to start a discussion with a sound designer. But it's good to hear that there's a development towards collaborating more and more before picture lock. Is it really sometimes into detail? Because there are famous stories about, for example, the collaboration between Skip Liefsay and Carter Burrell at the Coen Brother films. They really discuss frequencies, areas from time to time. You go high, I go low, etc.
Well,
is that also the case?
I had a movie once where we discussed things like this, and also that I would get like the key of the score at the moment, so I could filter the frequencies. That way we had a good blend, but in the end we didn't do it at all because it's just too much work, and it already, when we put everything together, it was already working very well. So that didn't happen. So, but sometimes we do. Composers do leave space for, if there's, for example, a lot of action, or I would say like a car chase or things like that, then we sometimes we discuss it, and sometimes composers just naturally know that there's going to be a lot of sound effects there, and they know what frequencies that it's going to be, more or less. So that's a good thing to think about. Yeah. And,
it's for the very first time when it comes together, it's at the premix.
Yeah, mostly, yeah. Of course, there are all kind of situations. Sometimes you just get it in the end. Sometimes you get it's already in the edit. So that there's a big range. But normally, I was asked to have the score before the premix, so I can start the premix with the score already.
Yeah.
Because if you're premixing with, it also happens you're premixing with offline temp, and then in the final mix you have to replace all this, and that's horrible. Also for the director, because he has so little time to get used to the whole picture.
Yeah. To the new music.
So the premix already for me is like 80-90% of how the final mix is going to be. So that's a really good stage to have the score, and quite essential, I think.
And you do the premix in your own studio? You're sitting in your studio now?
Yeah. And also now also working in Dolby Atmos every project, basically. That's also a reason to have it a bit earlier, because you can play around with that. That's mostly a thing composers don't do yet.
Oh, that's
so,
right.
Yeah. So that's So I mostly do it here, but if you can do it in a big stage already, that's even better. But
with premix, most of the times you do it in your own studio.
Yeah,
even.
but I think my studio is a bit like medium size, and it's not small. I have a projection as well, and so it's already translates pretty well to the big to the big stage. Yeah.
You would like to prefer composers to deliver before premix, and also start a collaboration during the editing already before picture.
Yeah, that would even I did a movie recently, and there was a really luxurious position for the director, because the composer made I think 70 cues based on the script.
Okay.
And so they did the editing all with his music, and that was really cool. And then there was a lot of some things really changed, but he also delivered stems for so they in the edit they already could choose like to mute things or leave things out. Of course, you have to have time for that.
And were those cues already what you might call end products, so fully produced, or were they still on the demo level?
Yeah, well, this was a science fiction film, and the music was really like synthetic, and so that was already pretty close to what it's gonna be. So there were no real life instruments in it, I think.
Yeah.
So that's also helps for this kind of movie. So
that's also, it might be different case, of course, if you have neat recordings of instruments.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
There might be
so that makes that makes it more difficult, because then you can also in the editing you might not choose things you would choose if they were recorded properly.
I understand. I understand. And you were talking about Dolby Atmos, so let's get into this a bit. Do you always, for every film now, you mix in Dolby Atmos?
Well, yeah, that's just like recently, last year, I started doing that. If you have this setup, then you have to really learn how to work with it. But once you have your session prepared and everything, then it's really easy to make all deliveries and all the versions, and it's really flexible. So I was like, I can go back to like 5.1 or stereo sessions, but that's even more work than just continue in my Atmos setup. So, and also I think if you work in Atmos and you make the re-render to 5.1, it sounds better than if you start working in 5.1. The Dolby renderer does some I don't really know what, but things with phase and stuff.
Okay.
It's it just sounds better. And also because if you're working in Atmos, you tend to make more use of the surround, and it's like more like a whole picture, and you have more definition and everything. And if you make the mix down to 5.1, you lose a bit of that, but you have made the decisions. Listening to it, you can really make detailed decisions, and in the end, that all adds up. Yeah, makes your mix better. It's a bit more work, but if you do it like every project, then it's not even so much more work, I think.
And is there a difference when you're working Atmos for composers? Should they take Atmos into account when they compose or when they produce or deliver the stems?
You could, I think you could have a little bit more separation in stems. So you can, like, if you want to have some sounds that you could use as objects because they're moving or stuff, and you don't want to like have everything but the drums to move, then it's like too much. So then you can have like elements. So I think it's nice to have like one stem with elements for objects. It could be used for objects. Nice to keep that in mind as a composer too. That we could play around with that.
Do you have an example of that? Most of the times music is quite static.
Yeah, it is.
In a film.
Yeah, sometimes composers make also sound effecty things. Like like swells or whooshy kind of sounds, and it's like a little bit in the middle between sound design and music.
But I imagine you don't take a solo violin and...
No, I wouldn't do that now. No, but or synthesizer things or things like that.
Yeah, I can imagine. It also depends on the character of the film, the sort of film, of course.
Or if you have like impact or impact, like things like that.
Okay, that's interesting stuff for us composers.
But it's also, I think, if you know that a film is also going to be released really in Atmos, then it's really good to know in advance and to have extra time even to mix it, like make a music mix for Atmos.
When we start talking about the mix, as you roll as a re-recording mixer, as it's called officially, delivering stems, is it problematic for composers, or do you find it they understand what is needed from your perspective as a re-recording mixer?
In generally, composers do know how to do that and don't have a lot of problems with it. Sometimes you have composers who are like, it's mostly if you don't get in touch soon enough. Then if they already mixed everything and you're like, I want to have stems, then sometimes they have like, but there's things going on my master bus and stuff. And but I think if you work for film as a composer, you have to know that you have to do that because it's and the only exception I think is for if you have really like songs, pop songs or things like that. I did receive stems for pop songs, but I mostly ended up making it almost sound like a stereo mix, and sometimes a little bit upmixed. And nowadays ask mostly for the score to be separated in stems, and if you have like songs, then I can just have a stereo mix, or sometimes the vocals separately, so you can play around with that with intelligibility. And but that's mostly how I ask for it.
Because a lot of times, as you said, composers, I mixed everything, so a lot of things are going on. There are of course tricks as a composer to use. When you put things together, they still sound the same as your original stereo mix. So they have to be aware of that and how to do that, of course, I guess.
Yeah, of course, yeah. And of course you have plugins who work with sidechain to have this effect of master bus compression. So, but also like if you have score, which is really dynamic, and then mostly there's not going on so much on the master bus, but it's more if you have like poppy things with a lot of compression, and that's
exactly. And
So
what I always do, apart from delivering stems, is also give simply a stereo mix as a kind of
yeah,
reference.
yeah, that's also good. Yeah,
That's
I
also
also ask for that.
okay. Oh, you also ask for
Yeah,
that because
yeah,
that's
yeah,
also,
because you also want to, yeah, of course.
you wanna.
I don't want to. I want to respect the mix that the composer
Mhm.
made, you know. So, except for the movie, you have to adjust something, then of course. But
Exactly.
yeah, you want to have you want to have the mix down of your film because a lot of people are gonna watch it in stereo. You want to
Yeah.
you want music to sound like the composer
Yeah.
meant it. So
It's intended.
yeah,
Okay, so that's a good delivering stand, but also give a stereo mix as a
yeah,
frame of reference for the re-recording mix and how to deal with it.
yeah, yeah,
As you at least intended it as a composer.
exactly, yeah, yeah.
And
So
of
if you
course,
change it, then you at least know you're changing.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
You said that you prefer to have composers when the mix starts in the beginning.
yeah,
How do they react in general? Let me tell you my experiences. What I always do when I attend a mix, then particularly when it's for feature films, because it's a long 1.5. A lot of films nowadays are 2 hours. It's just a
yeah.
kind of tendency to become longer and longer.
Mm-hmm.
As a composer, it's very hard to to keep the overview of the whole film, which is in fact also kind of big composition. So what I did is when there's doubt about a certain cue, whether the cue should stay in or not, then I would also always say, as one of the first persons in the room, well, throw it out because it's way too much music.
Yeah.
A way to also show the other people, okay, I'm not particularly picking
I'm willing
up.
to,
Yeah,
to
yeah,
cooperate.
exactly.
Yeah.
Because they always look at you, oh, there's the composer, he's probably
Yeah.
going to complain
Yeah.
about everything we do with his music. Do you encounter this kind of situations that composers are very keen on their music, they start protesting immediately when the minute you touch their faders or whatever?
I don't. Yeah. No.
Okay.
Generally, no. Most of the times, the cooperation is really smooth. I think. As I have had such experience, but that's a long time ago. Composers do know that the music is like has to serve the film and not the other way around. In my experience, they are always pretty happy, and of course sometimes they want to do some cues. That's mostly what happens. They listen to it and they hear the rest of the sound design for the first time. So they are really like surprised that it sounds so much better than the offline, and the music has a better stage to show itself. Like they sometimes want to do some cues again or adjust a little bit of that. So that's also a reason to do it in the beginning. So they have like a few days to adjust some cues. Yeah, in my experience, also composers don't really mind if you take a cue out. If they notice it works, then.
And also when you start messing around with cues, you take certain layers out.
Yeah, it depends. My recent experience, they are all like, do whatever you want.
Okay.
So yeah, of course, I think if you mess it up, then they would say. Of course, there are. Maybe I've been lucky with really cooperating composers, but yeah.
People have learned, of course, throughout the years that it's part of the job being a film composer.
Yeah, exactly.
That you deliver in stems and that the final composition is actually made in the re-recording mix. They may take out some stems because the violins are in the way of the voices or whatever you can think.
Yeah.
It's become part of the profession. It's become more a profession compared to the old days, I guess. So that's good to know.
Yeah, and I also think I always encourage that the director should have heard everything already before he gets in the mixing stage, because it's the first time. Then how can you judge something, decide something so quick, and then still you make adjustments, but it's not like you're changing the music or something. So when composers come to the mixing stage, there's already a big agreement about what it should be, more or less.
Yeah, in the beginning of this talk, you said you always have a general meeting together with the director, most of the times also, of course, to discuss where music should be, what the sound designer should do, etc.
Yeah.
Is this the only meeting, or are more meetings throughout the process, or is it just
With the composer?
and maybe the director or maybe the three of you?
No, in my experience, the composer has meetings with the director. We have meetings with the director.
But not the three of you together.
Sometimes you have a viewing to watch, the stage the movie is in, and then you can watch together. So that happens sometimes. Yeah. In my experience, not like it's like one team that works together. I think that's not always necessary. Well, let's say you can do so much in the mix that you can always make it work. Mostly. So if you agree in the beginning what it should be, and then you have to just have to have freedom and time to play around and have your own space, and then it comes together again. I think it's good to have like everybody locks himself in the studio, and so you don't want to be all the time discussing like, I do this and you do that. So I think that's also a feeling of freedom and to experiment. And
exactly, I can imagine that the three of you are together again at the premix. Director, you, sound.
In a stage in the premix.
I
would not say in the beginning, because you have everything together. So it's good to have after a week or so, or to have a viewing of the premix or with the director and maybe the composer, and then. So that if you go to the big stage, then the like what's in there is already agreed on, and
exactly.
That pressure should not be there because you already have enough pressure to finish it and to make the mix as good as you can.
As a final question, do you see any possibilities for improvement in the process working with composers? Or are you
composers have the tendency to deliver late. So earlier is always better.
I assume that you make agreements about it. You set certain dates that they have to deliver.
Yeah.
They don't stick to it?
No, not really. Some of them. I think that's also because it's such a creative process. It's always, I recognize that in the end you get like... You really get into it, and then suddenly the deadline is already there, and then of course you could collaborate more, but it's funny because more collaboration doesn't always lead to better results. Sometimes you have like no meetings at all and it works perfectly, or you have like a lot of meetings and it's really struggling, and so you just also have to have a click and a connection with each other. But I think the director is the one who, of course, chooses who he works with, and that's maybe also why, in my experience, it works quite well. Maybe they are kind of the same creative minds. I don't know. But your question was how it could be improved.
You have any or advice for composers?
To have what I said earlier, to already make things based on the script. So in that stage already have cues and also the confidence that things will work out. And of course, technically, if Atmos gets more standard, then maybe there could be technical improvements, because most of the time it's just stereo stems. I think that works, but I think maybe if composers also start doing Atmos already in their studios, and I get like a session that it's already prepared in Atmos, that would even be better.
I understand.
So that's really technical thing, really. Well, also creative, but.
To end with a technical question, what's most of the time the system that you use? Is it still Pro Tools, which is quite...
Always Pro Tools.
Always Pro Tools, still. For another last question, because you also do a lot of international productions, so I guess you also work from time to time with composers from abroad.
Yeah.
Do you notice a difference in approach, or apart from the music itself? But
not so much, really.
Okay.
Oh, I suddenly think of a problematic film. I did. There was a process that was going pretty well, but I think just before premixing, the composer and the director didn't get along anymore, and then she quit, and then somebody had to stand in, get in, and continue the rest. And that was an interesting. There was something with the process going wrong, because she made cues and the director liked it, and he was like, "Okay, I want to use this," and she was okay, I'm gonna re-record the real instruments and stuff, and then it got back and it just sounded very different. And he was like, "Yeah, no, it's the same, but it's just with real instruments." And he's like, "No, it's totally different." I think if they had more time and to fix this, then it could have been fixed. That was an example that went really different, and that. But I don't think that's because she was from abroad. It could also have happened with a Dutch composer.
Yeah.
The level of the Dutch composer is also really good now, and it improved a lot, as well as everything in filmmaking, I think.
Yeah, that's quite clear. I think it really has professional level now.
Yeah.
Also, we talked about it. The attitude they have nowadays. The delivery stamps that they are aware of it. And
it's maybe also I think back in the days, composers were really like artists who really found themselves artists and also were artists, but and nowadays it's more like, because I think there's so much more films made also, and of course for broadcasting series and stuff. That composers really from an earlier stage know they're working for a medium, for another creative goal. You know that better than me, I think. You were it both.
I started in the old days.
Do you think so? Do you agree?
Yeah, I really agree. No, it's really different. People know now learn also how it works. Yeah. And this is your role, and you have to work on the film, not particularly on your music. Your music has to serve the film. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's good to hear that it's also your experience, that it's really professional.
I think it's also maybe a reflection of the whole generation difference. I think now people are really more collaborative minded.
And technology also enables it, of course. Much easier.
Yeah. Also, that is so much easier to find good sounds and good samples and good. It's a little bit easier composing more stuff, right?
Yeah, sure. The problem is more nowadays that there's many sounds. So it's a kind of luxury. The difficulty is more how do I choose the right sound, because there's so much.
Yeah.
When you work with synthesizers and omnisphere, stuff like that, and large worlds of possible sounds, apart from the sounds you could create yourself.
I think it is. Is it also? And I'm not going to interview you, but is it also that the requests of directors and they ask for more because they know everything's possible? Maybe back in the days you had more like a style things you did, and they ask you for that, and now they are like, oh, you can do anything. So
yeah, but still because there's so much possible, and anybody can make music nowadays, so your own style, your own identity has become more important, and people start looking for it and developing it, creating their own sounds, for example, or adjusting existing sounds so they become your own. And of course AI is also playing a role, definitely will play a role in this in the future, in the near future.
Yeah,
but that's a different discussion.
That's all. We can talk about that, but that's
that's a different interview. Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for your insights, sharing your insights as a sound designer. Really
yes, my pleasure.
And thanks a lot, and maybe we meet in future again. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll.
Okay.
All right.